For 3 years, I lived under the cold neon light of humiliation from the man I called my husband. I built the bridge for him to cross, and he burned it with me still on it. He thought I was just a second-rate risk analyst. He thought I was locked out. He was wrong. The key, the one to the career and wealth he and his arrogant partner crave, is in my pocket, and I will not hand it over until they pay with their professional souls. My name is Sierra Vance. I'm 35 years old, and until 10 minutes ago, I was the lead senior financial analyst at Ethel Consulting Group. The air in the 40th floor glass conference room was so cold it felt brittle. Every executive from the C-suite was there, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of the projector screen displaying my work. My work. The analysis for Apex 7, a merger so large it was valued in the billions, and the deal my husband, Ethan Cross, was pinning his entire career on. He was standing at the front, but not next to me. He was next to Veronica Hayes. Veronica was his partner on this deal and his chief internal rival for the executive vice president slot. They presented a united front, all polished ambition and predator-level confidence. I was just the analyst, the numbers person, there to confirm their genius. Except I wasn't. "If you look at slide 12, I said, my voice steady and clear, cutting through the self-congratulatory murmur. The projections from the acquisition target rely on a regulatory interpretation that is currently under review by the SEC. If that interpretation is denied, which my modeling suggests has a 65% probability, it exposes ACG to non-compliance penalties." I clicked to the next slide. A complex chart filled the screen. One only I understood how to build. We are not talking about a slap on the wrist. We are looking at fines that could potentially wipe out our entire first-year profit from the merger. It's a critical vulnerability. Silence. The executives leaned forward. This was not on their approved agenda. I saw Ethan's jaw tighten. He was supposed to look like the man with all the answers, and I had just presented a problem he clearly hadn't vetted. Before he could speak, Veronica did. "Sierra," she said. Her voice was like chilled vodka, smooth and sharp. She didn't even look at me. She addressed the board. "Thank you for that colorful assessment." I stopped. "It's not an assessment, Veronica. It's the data. The raw modeling shows a significant, what the modeling shows," she cut me off, finally turning her ice blue eyes on me, "is a fundamental lack of field experience." The condescension was thick enough to choke on. "You're a risk analyst. Your job is to find risk. But when you inflate theoretical problems, you paralyze the deal. You are costing us time and momentum." My stomach turned to lead. This wasn't a professional disagreement. This was an execution. "I'm not inflating anything," I said, keeping my tone level. "The risk is quantifiable. I can walk you through the algorithm I used. That won't be necessary." Veronica gave a dismissive little wave. And then the twist came. The knife she'd been holding behind her back. "In fact," she continued, addressing the CEO directly, "Sierra's unconstructive warnings have become such a persistent drag on the Apex timeline that I had to discuss it with Ethan. We agreed. I formally recommended to him this morning that Ms. Vance be moved to a non-essential internal audit role, or, failing that her employment be terminated immediately." The air was sucked from the room. I felt 20 pairs of eyes pivot to me, watching for the collapse, the tears, the outburst. I didn't look at them. I looked at my husband, Ethan Cross, the man I had breakfast with this morning, the man I'd helped prep for this very meeting, polishing his talking points while he ironed his shirt. He stood there, his face a perfect, smooth mask of professional neutrality. He didn't flinch. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look uncomfortable. He just watched. He was letting her do it. He was sacrificing me, his wife, in front of the entire leadership to prove to Veronica and the board that he was ruthless enough for the EVP chair, that nothing and no one came before his ambition. The betrayal was so sharp, so absolute. It was almost clarifying. The pain was a cold, hard stone in my chest. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me. They thought this was my execution. They were wrong. It was my release. I gave Veronica a small, tight smile. It wasn't friendly. It was the smile of a lock clicking shut. "I see," I said. My voice didn't waver. "In that case, you leave me no choice. I am formally withdrawing all proprietary analysis and detailed data models related to Apex 7, effective immediately." I clicked the remote, and the screen went black. A few executives gasped. "My data is my work product," I continued, turning to the CEO. "And since Ethel Consulting Group clearly no longer respects the integrity of that data, I cannot allow you to use it." I picked up my leather-bound notebook and my pen. "You'll have my formal resignation within the hour. Good luck with the merger." I turned and walked to the door. I did not run. I did not tremble. I could feel Ethan's gaze boring into my back, a silent, desperate command to stop, to fix this, to not make it worse for him. I never turned around. I walked out of that glass room, leaving behind a silence so total it felt like a bomb had gone off. The confusion and panic were a tangible thing I left in my wake. I didn't go to my desk. I went straight to the elevator, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the marble floor. As the elevator descended, I pulled out my personal phone. I opened a pre-written anonymous email. Attached was a single, heavily encrypted file, not the Apex data, but just enough of a hint, a breadcrumb about the regulatory flaws. I sent it to a small, hungry competitor, a firm I knew had a reporter on its payroll. I was planting a seed. I didn't know if it would grow, but I knew I wouldn't be the only one burning. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. I walked out of the building without looking back, the stone in my chest not just pain anymore. It was a whetstone, and I was just starting to sharpen the blade. I walked the 12 blocks back to our apartment. I didn't take a cab. I needed the biting November air to keep the numbness from consuming me. The sounds of the city felt distant, like I was moving through water. When I used my key, the silence in the apartment was the first warning. It wasn't empty. It was neat. Too neat. I walked into our shared bedroom. His side of the closet was gapped. The suits he wore daily were there, but the expensive ones, the Brioni he saved for closing dinners, the custom tuxedo were gone. I went into the master bath. His dop kit, the old leather one I bought him our first Christmas, was missing. On the dresser. The onyx tray where he kept his grandfather's watch was empty. The coldness in my chest crystallized. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision in that conference room. This wasn't him getting caught up in Veronica's ambition. He had packed. He had known this morning, when he kissed me goodbye, that I was going to be publicly executed. He had packed his bag, ready to flee the emotional fallout, ready to check into a hotel and play the part of the grieving husband whose wife had just snapped under pressure. The calculation of it took my breath away. The betrayal was so much deeper than I imagined. I turned and walked to my home office, my movements precise. I didn't bother looking at our joint accounts. That was a battlefield I wasn't ready to step onto. Instead, I logged into a secure, separate portal. The Emergency Retirement Fund. I'd set it up 5 years ago, half joking to myself that it was for a rainy day. It was pouring. I looked at the balance. It was healthy, well into 6 figures, built from bonuses he thought I'd spent on shoes and private investments he never bothered to ask about. I was solvent. I was safe. In the bottom drawer of my desk, beneath a stack of old tax returns, was a small, brushed metal USB drive. My real insurance policy. I plugged it into my personal laptop. It was all there. Every model, every algorithm, every projection on market volatility and regulatory shifts that ACG had dismissed as too cautious. My life's work. The work they didn't deserve. But the numbness was fading, replaced by a cold, surgical fury. I needed to know how deep the rot went. I opened my personal email and ran a data recovery program on the trash folder. Ethan and I had shared calendars and cloud access for years. He was careless with his digital footprint. The deleted messages began to repopulate, not from his ACG account, but from a private one, a thread between him and Veronica. My hands were steady as I clicked it. It wasn't just professional. It was casual, familiar, and it was filled with contempt for me. An email from Ethan, 2 weeks ago. She's digging in on the Apex regulatory angle again. It's becoming a liability. Veronica's reply, handle it, or I will. We can't let your ball and chain analyst drag this deal down just because she likes the color red on her spreadsheets. Ball and chain? My eyes scanned further. An email from 3 days ago. Ethan, the board meeting is set for 10. Are you sure this is the only way it's so public? Veronica, it's the best way. It's clean. You look decisive. You look like EVP material. And I get full, unchallenged control of the Apex data stream. She'll cry, she'll quit, and we move on by lunch. Stop being weak. I felt sick. He didn't just sacrifice me. He sold me. He traded me for a shot at a title. Veronica wanted me gone so she could drive the project and the company off a cliff without my warnings. And Ethan handed her the keys with me tied to the bumper. The sickness turned to ice. I dug deeper, past the emails, into a shared financial drive we used for personal taxes, a folder labeled MISC Ventures. 2 years ago, Ethan had taken a small stake in a fintech startup, a company he always complained was worthless paper. I found the sales ledger. He had sold his entire position, 100% of his shares. I looked at the date of the sale. It was 3 weeks ago. It was the day after I had first presented my initial, devastating risk analysis on Apex 7 to him, privately, over dinner. He knew. He believed my numbers. He saw the iceberg I was warning about, quietly lowered his own lifeboat. And then, this morning, he had calmly helped Veronica chain me to the deck. He hadn't just insulated himself from the deal's fallout. He had insulated himself from me. The last shred of the woman who walked into that building this morning vanished. The grief, the shock, the humiliation, it all burned away, leaving behind something hard, clear, and perfectly weighted. I opened a new document on my laptop, a blank page. I encrypted it with a rolling cipher that not even ACG's best could crack. At the top, I typed Logistics of Dissolution Cross. E.R. This was not a diary. It was an indictment. I began to type, my fingers flying. I used the language of a legal brief, the language of risk assessment. On October 15th, E. Cross executed the sale of assets file ref 7B totaling $82,000, citing no confidence in the holding, while simultaneously misrepresenting the asset's value to his spouse and financial partner. I documented every email, every date, every act of financial malfeasance and professional contempt. When I had captured the immediate facts, I picked up my phone. I scrolled past Ethan's name. No calls, no texts. Of course not. He was giving me space to calm down. I found the contact I had saved at a Women in Finance luncheon 2 years prior, Patricia Wells, the shark. The woman who dismantled tech bro billionaires in divorce court and barely wrinkled her suit. Her assistant answered on the second ring. Ms. Wells' office? This is Sierra Vance, I said. My voice was perfectly level. I need to schedule an emergency consultation with Ms. Wells regarding a high-asset dissolution. The case involves elements of severe professional conspiracy and financial malfeasance. There was a brief pause, the sound of typing. Ms. Wells can see you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Will that work? Perfectly, I said, and hung up. I closed the encrypted file. I looked around the silent, beautiful apartment, this museum of a life I thought I had. He wanted me gone. He wanted me to be invisible. Fine. I initiated the perfect silence. I went into my phone settings and stopped sharing my location. I logged out of every shared account. I would not be here when he finally slunk back, braced for tears and recriminations. I would simply be gone. He was about to find out what my absence actually cost. I did not sleep. The adrenaline and the ice in my veins would not allow it. At 4:15 in the morning, while the sky was still a bruised purple and Ethan was breathing deeply in the guest room, he must have come home late and chosen to avoid me. I rolled my small carry-on suitcase across the imported hardwood floor. It contained 3 suits, my personal laptop, toiletries, and nothing else. I left the jewelry he bought me. I left the photos. I slid the brushed metal USB drive into the pocket of my trench coat. It felt heavier than the suitcase. I locked the door behind me without making a sound. He would not even know I was gone for hours. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in Patricia Wells' office. It was minimalist, overlooking the harbor, all glass and brushed steel. Patricia herself was formidable, wearing a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my first car. She listened, her steepled fingers the only part of her that moved. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I presented the timeline, the printed copies of the deleted emails, the notes on the professional humiliation, and the sales ledger for the fintech stock. When I finished, she finally looked up from the documents. A flicker of something not pity, but professional respect crossed her features. "This is not just an affair, Sierra," she said, her voice crisp. "And it is not just a bad partnership. This," she tapped the sales ledger, "is a calculated, premeditated act of financial bad faith. He knew the ship was in trouble because you told him, and he sold his assets while leaving marital assets your joint professional reputation included exposed. He did not just cheat you, he defrauded the marriage." "Good," I said. "Then we understand each other." "Oh, I think we do," she replied, a thin smile appearing. "We are going to freeze everything he thinks he owns." My next stop was a high-rise in the financial district, one of those new, sleek buildings that specialize in corporate leases and absolute discretion. I paid the 3-month deposit from my emergency fund account. No shared names, no joint applications. The apartment was sterile, furnished with expensive, impersonal gray furniture. It was perfect. It was a sterile operating room for what I had to do next. I connected my laptop to the new, secure Wi-Fi. First, I composed my formal resignation email to the CEO and HR department of ACG, citing a hostile work environment and a fundamental disagreement over data integrity. It was professional, cold, and final. But before I hit send, I opened a new message. I forwarded the entire chain my resignation, the screenshots of the deleted emails from Veronica, the fintech sales ledger to an encrypted address. It belonged to an investigative journalist at the Financial Sentinel who specialized in blowing the lids off failed mergers. I did not add a comment. The data spoke for itself. Then, I hit send on the resignation. Next, I called my mobile provider. I transferred my old number, Ethan's number, the one on our family plan, to a new, independent account under my name only, then immediately had the number changed. I bought a burner SIM for my secondary communications. I went through every social media platform. Block, block, block. By noon, Sierra Vance, the wife of Ethan Cross, had ceased to exist digitally. My final act of the morning was a call to a headhunter I had known for years. "I need a short-term contract," I said. "Consulting, high-level risk analysis. I need it to be fully remote and completely anonymous. I will sign whatever non-disclosure you need." He was surprised but knew better than to ask personal questions. "I might have something. Dardanus Capital. They are trying to poach talent, aggressive portfolio. What is your rate?" I named a number that was 50% higher than my ACG salary. By 4 p.m., I had a signed contract. My new handler at Dardanus, a VP named Mark, called me on a secure line. "Welcome aboard. We are excited to see what you can do. We will start you on some internal audits to get you up to speed." "Actually," I said, my voice smooth and collaborative, "I had an idea. I would like to warm up by running a diagnostic on a hypothetical acquisition. Something complex. Say, a tech logistics merger in the billion-dollar range. It would be a great way for me to test your internal modeling systems." "Aggressive?" he said, sounding impressed. I like it. I will get you the data access. I was not practicing on their systems. I was using Dardanus Capital's resources to build the weapon that would dismantle Apex 7 from the outside. I was going to find every single weakness ACG had not seen, and I was going to do it while they paid me for the privilege. Just as I was shutting down my laptop for the night, my old phone, the one with the now deactivated SIM card, buzzed on the counter. It was connected to the Wi-Fi, and a final iMessage had managed to push through before the number went dark. It was from Ethan. Sierra, this is insane. You are acting like a child. You humiliated me. Call me now. We have to fix what you broke. I looked at the message, at the arrogant assumption that I was the one who broke it, that I was the one who needed fixing. I deleted the message thread and powered the phone down for the last time. He had no idea what was broken, but he was about to. I spent the next 3 days in the sterile quiet of my new apartment, a ghost in the city's machine. My new life was simple. I woke, I drank coffee, and I plugged into the Dardanus Capital servers. I was, officially, analyzing hypothetical market stressors. But I knew, and my new VP must have suspected, that the hypothetical model I was building was a direct X-ray of the Apex 7 deal. Using their superior resources, I was finding vulnerabilities even I had missed. The regulatory hole I'd warned Ethan about wasn't just a risk, it was a canyon. On the 4th day, the first tremor hit the outside world. I was monitoring the financial news feeds when a small column appeared in the Financial Sentinel. It was from the reporter I had emailed. It was subtle, just an industry inquiry piece. It didn't name ACG or Apex 7. It just asked, are we overlooking unverified loopholes in the current wave of billion-dollar tech mergers? Sources suggest a major deal, set to close this quarter, is sitting on a data integrity time bomb. It was a perfectly placed professional grenade. I knew the C-suite at ACG would read that and feel the blood drain from their faces. The real-time fallout came 2 hours later. My secure phone, the new one, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sierra, it's David, from modeling. Please tell me this is you. David was a junior analyst I had mentored, a quiet, brilliant kid from MIT. I'd protected him from budget cuts twice. I texted back a single word, here. His reply came instantly. It's a 5-alarm fire. After you left, they tried to access your Apex archive. They can't. They thought it was standard AES, but it's not. What did you use? Something old school, I texted back. I didn't elaborate. The algorithm was one my father, an old COBOL programmer, had taught me. It was obscure and beautiful, and to a modern brute force attack, it was invisible. David. They're losing their minds. The investors are calling, spooked by the Sentinel piece. They're demanding the verification data you presented. Since they couldn't get yours, they tasked Gary from mid-level to recreate the model. Sierra. It was a disaster. His numbers were wrong, wildly optimistic. He missed the entire regulatory flaw. He presented it this morning, and one of the investors, the one from the private equity firm, tore him apart. He knew the math was bad. Now there's talk of an internal investigation into Gary for gross negligence. I read the text, my face impassive. Gary was an idiot, but he was a useful idiot. David's next text was the one I was waiting for. It gets worse. Veronica just left a senior VP meeting. She went scorched earth on Ethan, publicly, in front of the COO. She said he failed to manage his primary asset and gave her assurances that his wife was under control. She blamed him for your walkout. His credibility is zero. He looks like a fool who couldn't even manage his own household, let alone a billion-dollar deal. So, the alliance was broken. The predators were turning on each other. I looked at my other laptop, the one monitoring my old compromised life. My old email inbox was a portrait of Ethan's collapsing psyche. The first 48 hours had been pure, narcissistic rage. How dare you? You embarrassed me. You will be hearing from my lawyer. But the tone had shifted dramatically. The new emails, dozens of them in the last few hours, were saturated with panic. Sierra, this is not funny anymore. You need to call me. The investors are asking questions. The Sentinel is sniffing around. Did you talk to them? Did you do this? I'm getting calls from our friends. They're worried. I'm worried. I don't know what to tell them. Where are you? And then, the latest one. Sent 20 minutes ago. Sierra, please. I am begging you. They're calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning because of that article. They need the data. They need your data. You are the only one who has the key. Whatever you want. I'll give you anything. Just call me. Please. I'm sorry. I read the I'm sorry and felt nothing at all. No vindication, no pain. It was just a variable. His desperation was sloppy. He had been calling our mutual friends, leaving frantic, accusatory voicemails. 2 of them had texted my new number, forwarded to them by my sister. I replied to both with the same simple message. I'm fine, just taking a long overdue sabbatical. I'll be in touch. The friends went silent. My firewall was holding. I sat back, looking at the city lights from my anonymous 45th floor window. The pressure was building perfectly. I was the only one who could provide the clarity ACG needed to survive the week. I was the only one who held the key. They thought my knowledge of the Apex deal was my only weapon. They were wrong. My real weapon was my mind, and it was time to upgrade it. I closed David's text thread. I logged out of the Dardanus server. I ignored the cascade of pathetic emails from my husband. I opened a new browser window and pulled up a doctoral-level course on Python, the programming language used for high-frequency trading and predictive AI. They were all still fighting over the last war, the one I had already won. I was preparing for the next one. I started Lesson 1. It was Friday, exactly 1 week since I had walked out of that glass room. The Apex 7 deal was officially hitting the wall. The regulatory due diligence period was closing, and the SEC, undoubtedly spurred by the whispers from the Financial Sentinel, made its official move. They didn't just ask questions, they issued a formal stop order on the review, pending receipt of the full risk model I had warned them about. My phone buzzed. It was David, my former colleague. His texts were short, breathless. SEC just put a hold on the review. They demand your original model. They said the numbers they were given by Gary are insufficient and potentially misleading. They're angry. I typed back. And Ethan and Veronica tried to stall. They told the SEC the files were temporarily corrupted during an analyst transition. The SEC regulator told them that was the worst excuse he'd heard all year. They are in deep trouble. Sierra. A minute later, another text. Veronica is losing it. She hired an external cybersecurity firm. They've been trying to brute force your archive for the last 24 hours. They can't get in. They told her the encryption isn't modern. It's some bizarre, custom algorithm they've never seen. They said it could take them 6 months, not 6 hours. I almost smiled. 6 months was optimistic. My father's logic was a fortress. David's final text was the payload. The board just gave them an ultimatum. 48 hours. If they can't produce your data, satisfy the SEC, and get the hold lifted by Monday morning, the deal is dead, and Veronica is fired. Publicly. For cause. 48 hours. The clock was ticking, and I was the only one who could stop it. I closed the text thread. I was busy. My warm-up project at Dardanus Capital was complete. My new VP, Mark, was ecstatic. "This is brilliant, Sierra," he said over a secure call. My anonymity held. He still only knew my first name and my consulting LLC. "This analysis of the logistics sector is publishable. It's a game changer." "Then let's publish it," I said, my voice smooth. There was a major and usually boring fintech conference happening in Chicago. It was all virtual this year, which made it the perfect venue. I suggested we submit my analysis, the fake one, the Dardanus one, as a white paper to the conference's public data portal. It had nothing to do with Apex 7, but it used a methodology so advanced, so uniquely mine, that anyone from ACG who saw it would know. It was a digital flare. It was me announcing to the industry that I wasn't missing, I wasn't broken, and I wasn't in hiding. I was working. And I was working for their competition. I hit submit, and the paper went live. I knew the analysts at ACG, desperate for any clue about my methods, would be scanning that conference portal. This would confirm their worst fears. While I was launching the next phase of my career, Ethan was desperately trying to salvage the wreckage of our old one. The rumors of my sabbatical weren't holding. He needed a new narrative. My sister called me, her voice shaking with rage. "Sierra, you need to know what Ethan is doing. He just showed up at the Daily Grind, your old coffee shop. He was asking for you, carrying a bouquet of sad-looking lilies." I gripped the phone. What did he say? He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He was asking everyone if they'd heard from you. And then, her voice dropped, he started telling people he was worried about your mental state, that the pressure of the Apex deal had made you unstable, that you'd had a psychotic break and vanished. A psychotic break. He wasn't just trying to save his job, he was trying to invalidate my sanity. He was building a narrative where he was the poor, worried husband, and I was the crazy wife who couldn't handle the pressure. It was vile, it was manipulative, and it was exactly what I expected. Jenna was there, my sister continued. She told him to get lost and that you were the sanest person she knew. But he planted the seed. Sierra, he's trying to discredit you. Good, I said, my voice cold. Let him. Tell everyone to stay away from him. He's desperate. That night, I opened my encrypted divorce log. I added a new entry, detailing the coffee shop incident with cold, legal precision. Attempted character assassination via dissemination of false information regarding mental health. Location, the Daily Grind. Witness Jenna R. I read back over the last week. The timeline of his betrayal. The stock sale. The emails with Veronica. The public humiliation. The rumor-mongering. Any flicker of doubt, any residual empathy I might have felt for the man I once loved, was extinguished. He wasn't just a weak man who made a bad choice. He was a predator who was angry his prey had escaped the trap. My resolve, which I thought was already steel, hardened into diamond. I picked up my phone. It was past 8 p.m., but I knew Patricia Wells worked late. She answered on the first ring. "Patricia, it's Sierra Vance." "Sierra, I assume you're calling about the chatter I'm hearing from ACG's legal counsel. They're trying to find you." "Forget them," I said. "It's time. I want you to file the dissolution petition." "Everything," I said. "File the petition. File the motion to freeze our joint assets, and attach the exhibits, all of them, the emails with Veronica, and especially the sales ledger for the fintech stock. I want him served at his office, Monday morning, right when his 48-hour deadline expires." Patricia was silent for a moment. I heard the faint smile in her voice when she spoke. "That," she said, "is beautifully precise. Consider it done. He'll get the papers just as the Apex 7 deal breathes its last. He's going to have a very, very bad Monday." "That's the plan," I said, and hung up. Monday morning. I didn't have to be at ACG, but I was watching the drama unfold with the clinical detachment of a surgeon. The final hammer blow arrived at 10:37 a.m. The news feeds exploded. The SEC officially suspended the Apex 7 merger review. The agency issued a statement citing unacceptable deficiencies in validated risk assessment data. The market reacted instantly. The stock prices of all three major companies involved in the merger dropped like stones, plunging 4.5% across the board in minutes. The loss was devastating. The deal was not just paused, it was on life support and bleeding out. An emergency board meeting was called at ACG. This time, the focus wasn't on the deal, it was on the cleanup. I got a play-by-play text from David. He was hiding in the server room, tracking the flow of internal communication. "It's carnage," he wrote. "The CEO is demanding heads. They are grilling Veronica." Since Veronica Hayes was the one who had publicly dismissed my warnings and formally demanded my termination, she became the logical scapegoat. The charge: gross professional negligence. Veronica is fighting back, David continued. She's trying to throw Ethan under the bus. She says he was her guarantee that your concerns were unfounded and that he assured her you would comply after the public dressing down. She blamed him for your walkout. His credibility is zero. He looks like a fool who couldn't even manage his own household, let alone a billion-dollar deal. Ethan, standing alone in that sterile, hostile room, could only offer his frantic, pathetic denials. He had no proof. He had no data. All he had was the memory of his own cold silence as his wife was humiliated. He was exposed, his ambition, the thing he valued most, dissolving into pure liability. His reputation, once pristine, was now irrevocably tainted by his association with the spectacular failure of the Apex deal. This was the perfect moment. I knew Patricia was delivering the divorce papers right about now. The legal documents included the screenshots of the contemptuous emails between Ethan and Veronica. I contacted Patricia immediately. "I need you to leak one thing," I instructed. "An anonymous tip to the ACG Council. Mention that the encrypted files contain not just risk data, but partial documentation suggesting a collaborative effort between E, Cross, and V, Hayes to create a hostile work environment designed to eliminate an employee with negative but accurate data." Patricia didn't hesitate. "Understood. Planting the seed of criminal conspiracy while protecting your identity." Excellent. The effect was instantaneous. Within the hour, the focus of the board meeting shifted again. It wasn't just about data, it was about professional misconduct. Veronica Hayes was served with a letter placing her on immediate, unpaid leave pending an internal investigation into her unethical behavior and gross negligence. She was officially stripped of all duties related to Apex 7. She was broken. But Ethan was the one I really wanted to see isolated. He had been complicit in the conspiracy, but the moment she was fired, his main ally, his climbing partner, vanished. He was completely alone. He spent the next 2 hours in a frenzy. My old work email, still active, received a single desperate message from him, devoid of his usual arrogance. "Sierra, I received the papers. I know you're angry. I understand. I was wrong about everything. I made a huge mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. Please, I need to talk to you. I can fix this. Just tell me where you are." He didn't mention the divorce papers specifically. He mentioned the mistake. He was still focused on the professional crisis, still equating losing the deal with losing me. The apology was a Hail Mary pass for his career. I glanced at the email. It was exactly what Patricia needed. I forwarded it to her with a one-word note: exhibit. That evening, I was preparing for a quiet dinner in my anonymous apartment when David texted again. "Ethan is outside the old apartment building. The security guard just called me. He was trying to break into your old post box. He looks like a vagrant. They turned him away. He's gone." I imagined him standing there, his expensive suit rumpled, the desperate, entitled look on his face as he was rebuffed by a minimum-wage security guard. He had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and no way to reach me. He was truly isolated. I was free. I put the phone down and walked to the window. The city lights sparkled, promising everything he had just lost. I had the divorce log filed. I had a new, high-paying, autonomous job. Now, I needed one last symbolic break. I opened my laptop and browsed a few high-end auto dealer websites. I chose a sleek, black electric SUV, fast, efficient, and completely silent. I negotiated the price via email, paid the deposit using the emergency retirement fund, and scheduled the pickup for the day after tomorrow. It would be registered solely in my name. No shared debt, no joint title. It wasn't just a car. It was the chariot of my independence. It was Thursday evening, 4 days after the SEC suspension. I was working on my Python homework when the doorbell rang. I checked the security feed. My heart gave a single, hard thump, but it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. Standing outside my anonymous high-rise apartment was Veronica Hayes. The change in her was staggering. The sharp angles of her corporate armor were gone. Her expensive suit was rumpled. Her hair looked like she'd run her hands through it 100 times, and her face was blotchy, stripped bare of the foundation and cold confidence she usually wore. She looked frantic, cornered, and small. A private investigator. It had to be. Ethan was desperate, but Veronica was rich and knew which strings to pull. She had found me. I opened the door, but only enough for my shoulder to block the entrance. I didn't invite her in. I kept my expression perfectly neutral. She was standing in my court now. Sierra. Her voice was hoarse, stripped of its icy edge. Thank God. I knew you hadn't just vanished. I said nothing, just waited. She lunged straight into the plea, desperation practically radiating off her. Look, I know what I said. I know how badly I handled the meeting last week, but you have to listen to me. Apex is collapsing. The SEC investigation is escalating. If we don't get your model decoded and validated, ACG is facing massive penalties, not just the fine, Sierra. They could lose their entire regulatory standing. It will destroy my career. I'll lose everything. Everything, I asked, my voice low and clinical. Like what? Veronica. Your chance at the EVP position. She flinched. More than that, my reputation, my future. Look, I'm being investigated internally. I'm on unpaid leave. If I lose Apex, I'm ruined. You're the only one who can fix this. You have the key. Please. Sierra, help me. Her voice cracked on the last word. The sight of Veronica Hayes, the queen of the high-stakes merger, begging on my doorstep, was profoundly satisfying. Help you, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Let's discuss the terms of your help. Tell me again. Veronica, what did you say to the board when you proposed my termination? Use the exact language. She blinked, confused by the shift in conversation. What? The terms? I insisted, my gaze unwavering. When you executed me in that room, you accused me of inflating risk due to a fundamental lack of field experience, didn't you? You said my warnings were unconstructive and a drag on the timeline. Those were your words. Were they accurate? She swallowed hard. No, of course not. It was professional pressure. We were all stressed. She tried to pivot, grasping for a lifeline. It was Ethan, Sierra. He was the one pushing the hardest to get you out of the way. He wanted full control of the narrative. He's the real mastermind. I'm sure he was. I agreed easily. He signed off on the execution. But you delivered the speech. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so it was just for her. I have something else. Veronica. Something that wasn't in the public files. A partially decrypted thread related to your management of the private equity stake in Apex. Certain, shall we say, premature transactions that look a lot like insider trading. Something that could move this from a professional negligence issue to a criminal one. Her face went white. The last vestige of her corporate composure shattered. Her eyes darted wildly, confirming my suspicion. I hadn't fully cracked the file yet, but I knew enough to know it was damning. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, you can't. That was just a small oversight. Everyone does it. Please. Sierra, if ACG collapses, I lose my retirement. I lose my life. I will be publicly destroyed. She was sobbing now, the tears carving tracks through her makeup. The predator was trapped and crying for mercy. You need to save ACG so you can save yourself, I stated. And you need my data to do that. The full, proprietary, highly accurate data you publicly claimed was worthless. I held the door a fraction wider, but still blocked her path. I have one condition, Veronica. One thing you must do before I even consider sending the key. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, pathetic and desperate. Anything. Just name it. You will go back to your apartment, I commanded, and you will write an email, a public email, sent to every single member of the ACG board, every executive, and every partner. In that email, you will clearly and unequivocally admit that you publicly made a severe error in professional judgment. You will retract your comments about my lack of experience and confirm that Sierra Vance's risk analysis was, in fact, the only accurate assessment of the Apex 7 merger? Her jaw dropped slightly. Admit I was wrong to everyone. Yes, I confirmed. And you will confirm that my termination was a catastrophic mistake made by the leadership team, a mistake driven by your counsel and Ethan's endorsement. You will clear my name publicly, in writing. Only then, once the board has read your statement of confession, will I consider releasing the information you need. But that will destroy what little credibility I have left, she choked out. Your credibility is already zero, I said, cold as the marble floor. This is simply the price of admission to the only life raft available. Send the email, Veronica, or watch the ship sink with you chained to the mast. I watched her process the impossible choice total. Certain, criminal ruin or professional humiliation. After a long, shuddering breath, she nodded once, a broken, defeated movement. I'll do it. I closed the door gently but firmly. I didn't bother watching her walk away. The first part of the vengeance was complete. My name would be cleared, and she would write the script herself. The public email arrived at ACG at 7 a.m., Friday morning. I knew because Patricia Wells had forwarded it to me instantly. The subject line alone must have caused heart attacks across the 40-story building, formal retraction and urgent warning regarding Apex 7 risk integrity. Veronica had kept her word. The email was a brutal, self-immolating confession. She stated, in sharp corporate language, that she had been severely mistaken in her assessment of the data and, crucially, that she had compounded that error by publicly suggesting the termination of the lead risk analyst, Sierra Vance, whose warnings she now confirmed were the only accurate projections available. She explicitly stated the data failure lay squarely with the management team herself and Ethan for prioritizing expediency over professional integrity. The resulting shockwave was exactly what I'd calculated. Ethan Cross's reputation dissolved instantly. Veronica's email confirmed he was not only complicit in the attempt to silence the truth, but that he had sanctioned the betrayal of his own wife for personal gain. The board realized, with blinding clarity, that due to the ambition and arrogance of two managers, they had driven out the only person who held the key to saving a multi-billion-dollar deal. He showed up at Patricia's office that afternoon. He didn't find me. He found a message waiting for him that was far more devastating than my absence. I had agreed to meet him, but only on my terms. I was sitting in Patricia's sleek, dark wood conference room, but I was facing the harbor, my back to the door. Patricia sat across the table from me, a pristine legal pad before her. Ethan walked in. I heard the hesitation in his steps. He tried to speak to me, but Patricia intervened immediately, cutting him off with the ease of a master. "Mr. Cross," Patricia said, her voice dry and authoritative. "Please sit." "Sierra has agreed to this meeting solely for the purpose of discussing the dissolution of your marriage. Any communication regarding ACG is moot. She has resigned. You are aware the firm's counsel is now focusing on the hostile work environment outlined in Ms. Hayes's email." He ignored her, his eyes fixed on my back. "Sierra, you can't be serious. You read Veronica's email, didn't you? I told you she was the one. She was panicking. This entire thing is ridiculous. We need to focus on the divorce. We need to save what we can." "We are focusing on the divorce." "Ethan," Patricia interrupted smoothly, sliding a thick document across the table. "This is the final separation agreement. I advise you to sign it." The document was massive. It wasn't just a simple division of assets. This was the knife I had forged in the cold fire of my betrayal. He started flipping through it, his face turning an unhealthy shade of gray. The compensation package was enormous. It wasn't just based on my former salary. It was based on his potential salary, the executive vice president title he was so desperate for, which I had spent 3 years of late nights supporting him to achieve. My compensation was based on the value I had created, a value he had just destroyed. Then he got to the final page. The twist. "What is this?" he demanded, pointing to a clause. A public admission, acknowledging and formally apologizing for the professional bullying and manipulation endured by Sierra Vance during the marriage. "I won't sign that. This is slander." "It is a non-negotiable term of this agreement," Patricia said, leaning forward. "You will sign it, or we will fight this in court, where we will enter into the record every email, every conversation, and every lie you told her, including the one about the fintech stock." He went silent. The color drained completely from his face. "The stock was worthless," he whispered, frantic. It was illiquid. "It was an $18,000 position. It means nothing." Patricia smiled. A thin, satisfied, lawyerly smile. "It means you were actively divesting assets 3 weeks before you allowed your wife to be professionally executed. It means you believed her risk assessment, protected your own stake, and conspired to silence her for career gain. We have your emails to Veronica. We have the proof you planned this. In divorce court, that $18,000 is evidence of malice and bad faith. The judge will not be kind. Mr. Cross." He looked utterly defeated, a hollow man in an expensive, rumpled suit. He was cornered. It was then, and only then, that I turned around. I faced him fully, and I saw the desperate, pleading failure in his eyes. He looked exactly like the man I knew he was beneath the polished smile, cowardly and entitled. I spoke, my voice devoid of emotion, a clean, sharp sound in the quiet room. "You thought you were lowering yourself when you married me. You thought I was a ladder for you to climb." I paused, letting him absorb the full weight of the memory of his arrogance. "No. You only showed me that my value exceeded your capacity to recognize it." I gave him one last look, a look of pure, cold indifference. I turned back to the window. "Patricia," I said. "He knows what to do. I'm finished here." I did not wait for his answer. I stood and walked out, leaving him alone in the room with the divorce papers and the knowledge that he was utterly, irretrievably ruined, professionally and personally. He had lost the entire game on every single front. The silence of my walkout was louder than any shout. The call came on Monday evening. It wasn't Ethan. It was the CEO of Ethel Consulting Group himself. His voice, usually booming with self-importance, was tight with desperation. "Sierra, I am calling to offer you an official full-time position, effective immediately. We are offering you a senior director title, managing the entire risk and compliance division, a salary package 50% higher than your previous role, plus a retroactive bonus for your initial Apex work. We need you back. We need the data. You are the only person who can lift the SEC hold." I listened, holding the phone away from my ear just slightly. The offer was impressive. Everything Ethan had been clawing for, handed to me after 1 week of silence. "That's a very generous offer, Mr. Davies," I replied, my tone flat. "But I have to decline." A long, shocked silence. "You decline, Sierra. This is a crisis. We are on the brink of a massive regulatory fine and potentially losing billions. Name your price." "We will meet it." "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about professional justice. I can offer you the decoded data, but it comes with non-negotiable terms." I laid out the terms, cold and precise. "First, I am currently under a lucrative consulting contract with Dardanus Capital. My assistance to ACG is a one-time service to protect market integrity, not a return to loyalty. Second, Ethan Cross must be immediately denied any promotion and must undergo a documented public review regarding his conduct in the Apex matter. His career trajectory at ACG must be flatlined, permanently." He sputtered. But that's punitive. We can't just, "You sacrificed your best analyst for his ambition." I cut in. You have already demonstrated your willingness to be punitive. Now you must demonstrate your willingness to be fair. Ethan Cross conspired to create a hostile environment to silence an accurate risk assessment. He must be held accountable for the failure that cost the firm billions in market cap today. He hesitated for nearly a minute. He was calculating the cost of my terms versus the collapse of Apex 7. The math was simple. We agree to your terms. He finally conceded, his voice defeated. Ethan Cross will be dealt with. Now. The data. One last thing, I added. You asked why I'm helping. It's not for ACG. It's not for you. It's for the market. I will send you the decryption key, but I will not send the files. I will send a link to a remote server containing the complete, validated data set. I retain control of the distribution of that data for the first 24 hours. What does that mean? He asked, sounding desperate. It means I will present it. I had my power move ready. I would give them the information, but first, I would give them the truth. I will conduct an emergency, virtual presentation to the entire ACG board and the lead investors tomorrow at 10 a.m. It will be the only time I appear. I will not be explaining the data. I will be explaining the process by which the data was suppressed. Do you accept? He had no choice? Yes. Get us the link. I didn't send the data yet. First, I sent them an encrypted document detailing my work with Dardanus. Just so you understand the stakes, I wrote, while your systems were compromised by incompetence, I have developed a proprietary risk model that is exponentially more robust than my original Apex 7 projection. The rescue of your deal is the smallest part of my current capabilities. This was the final shock. They had not just lost an analyst, they had empowered their competition. The next morning, I logged into the secured virtual conference. The faces of the ACG board and the lead investors, all 50 of them, stared back at me. Ethan and Veronica were conspicuously absent. Good morning, I said. My voice was calm, a sharp contrast to the panic in the room. I didn't open the data files. Instead, I opened a simple text document. I read the section of Veronica's public email where she had called my analysis worthless. I read the exact phrases she had used to humiliate me. Then, I displayed a screenshot of Ethan's blank face, taken from a security camera photo provided by David. During the moment he chose his silence over my career, I put a single caption beneath it: complicity. The data you need is now live, I announced, and displayed the server link. But before you access the numbers that will save your merger, you must understand how close you came to total collapse. You rejected my analysis because you allowed management to prioritize ego and ambition over mathematical integrity. You permitted a hostile environment to silence an inconvenient truth. I clicked through the final slides, showing the validated risk numbers, the massive fines they would have faced. The data was irrefutable. I am providing this solution because I believe in the integrity of the market, I concluded, looking directly into the camera. I am not providing it out of loyalty to ACG or to any individual in this room. My loyalty is to the truth, and from now on, that is the only thing that defines my work. I ended the presentation. The screen went black. The silence on the line was profound. My contract with ACG was complete. The rescue was spectacular, and I had left them with a permanent, burning shame. The presentation was my final move. The sheer public humiliation of the board, coupled with the realization that I was the only thing standing between them and a complete failure, forced their hand. The announcement came through internal channels within the hour. Ethan Cross was terminated immediately. The public statement cited managerial misconduct and lack of transparency, contributing to the firm's recent regulatory challenges. He was gone, not with a promotion, but with a corporate scarlet letter permanently branding his resume. Veronica Hayes, already on leave, was pushed out of the industry entirely. Her professional reputation, the thing she valued above all else, was ruined. Her role in the public failure of Apex 7 too obvious to ever overcome. A week later, I met Patricia Wells at her office to sign the final divorce papers. Ethan did not appear. He had finally conceded that any attempt to fight the agreement would only drag the truth, the emails, the stock sale, the public shaming into a permanent court record. He signed the papers without contest. The compensation, based on his hypothetical EVP salary, was generous. I used it to pay off the remaining mortgage on our old apartment, then sold it, banking the profits into a diversified, high-security portfolio. I was financially unshackled. Mr. Davies called me 3 times to formally rescind my resignation and offer me the senior director position again. I declined every time. I had bigger plans. I formally transitioned from a consultant to a permanent senior vice president at Dardanus Capital, where I was granted full autonomy. They gave me total autonomy to build my new risk modeling division from scratch, based on the advanced Python algorithms I had started learning in my spare time. They didn't just hire me, they invested in my future. I didn't stay in the sterile city apartment. I bought a small, beautiful house in a quiet suburb an hour outside the city, a place with sprawling oak trees and room to breathe. I focused on building my new team, designing next-generation risk models, and finally, for the first time in years, pursuing my personal interests. I enrolled in the expensive equestrian lessons I had put off while supporting Ethan's career climb. The time in the saddle, the focus on the horse, was a meditation. It was a life built entirely for me, by me. A year passed. I barely thought about Ethan. He was a footnote in my financial history. Then came the final, pathetic echo. I received a thin envelope from Ethan's former attorney. The letter was a formal inquiry regarding the terms of the spousal support agreement. It detailed how Ethan had been rejected by every reputable financial firm he applied to. It described his struggle to find sustainable work, his dwindling savings, his financial desperation. I looked at the letter. I didn't unfold it completely. I didn't read the details of his suffering. I walked over to the kitchen counter and dropped the letter, unopened and unread, directly into the trash can. I felt nothing. No surge of vindication, no lasting anger, and certainly no sympathy. The revenge had been completed not when he lost his job, but when I looked at my own life and realized I was no longer defined by his opinion, his betrayal, or his existence. I had won back my sovereignty. I sat down at my desk in my new home office, which overlooked my garden, not a busy street. My name was on the door at Dardanus. My algorithms were reshaping market perception. I was invited to speak at the National Risk Expert Symposium, not just to talk about data, but about the profound importance of trusting your own judgment, even when everyone else tells you you're wrong. I smiled. It was a genuine smile. I was completely peaceful, completely free, and officially closed the old chapter, opening a future no longer defined by anyone else but myself. Thank you for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button to help my story reach more listeners.